Ah,
Hello.
yeah. The quarterfinals are done. We're entering semifinals. And guess what? I did not double check whether or not all my predictions were correct of best of fives. I probably should have done that.
Oh.
No, but I'm pretty sure I was correct in the Chinese quarterfinals getting all to 5 games, but being completely wrong about the 3-1 from GENG. But that's totally fine. Everybody else was wrong about Cloud9 going to win. Hi, this is Vision Denial. My name's Sam, and we got Connor. And we would have Josh, but scheduling conflicts and everything the rest. Eventually we'll have him for at least one of these. But that being said, we're a channel that does some analysis about international League of Legends competitions. And just our general thoughts and everything that's going on. And we've just finished the quarterfinals. There's just 4 teams left. There are only 4 teams left. I want to start with champions.
Okay.
Mostly because I want to get your count on the champions. Do you know how many champions we're at right now?
I believe it's 89. We just had one new champion in the whole quarterfinals.
Mm-hmm.
Was the Annie. So we will see.
I have to say that I was completely wrong. I thought we were going to stop at 88.
Wow.
And, well, look at me. Immediately crying had to completely ruin my streak. That said,
I don't think we'll hit the 92 now, which to tie the record. But
just I gotta pick 90. No, I'm just gonna accept that I have completely misjudged how many more champions people were gonna pick. That said, is there any particular type of trend that you've seen in picks and bans that strike you as interesting? Like, even if the champions aren't particularly new, is there a drift towards certain trends that you think like strike you as interesting?
Yeah, I think I know what we see is like we talked about this originally of like, oh, we have a set meta and everyone's trying to play to it, right? And then we get to like that day 2 of everyone saying, you know what, this is the meta and here's our counters to it, or just doing our own thing. And it kind of plays back into the why maybe like North America always is better on day 2 something, because it's like, well, usually on day 2 they stop trying to play what everybody else is playing and play what they're playing. And that's kind of what we're seeing now. To the roundabout way of saying that is teams are playing. It's still the meta. There's still the things that like Lee Sin is good, for example, just general statement, right? But that's kind of always just a fair statement. Teams are playing for the overall team comps their style, not just a the overall meta. Like we're seeing I think it was the EDG versus RNG series is the classic example of like one team plays Enchanters, one team plays only tank and gauge supports. It's not a matter of the meta, it's what they do. This is their style.
Oh yeah.
Right? So right? And like they're saying like there's multiple ways of playing the game, which I think we all could agree there's lots of different ways to play League. There's not necessarily a right answer. There might be a right answer under certain conditions,
right?
But the conditions are always changing, right? So
no, you're absolutely correct, and I think this is like because they were able to like play to their own style, or they made their own answers to what is currently in the meta. We got a lot more aggressive games.
Yeah.
Right? how many of these games were passive other than Hololive literally doing nothing? I don't know why they were. Hololive was one of the most passive teams out of all of these. They tried really hard to be somewhat aggressive, but they kept picking Varus, and I was just wondering why they would do anything. We'll go from a series to series basis at some point,
Sure.
but I do think that it was one a lot of fun, but it was very lopsided for a good portion of these games. Mostly because
Yeah.
the approach to team fighting very much depended on if one team was more coordinated than the other, or B, one team was better at cleaning up the mistakes of the other.
Yep.
Right? I don't think we got to see much of Damwon do much because I don't think Mad was the regular that was always first to the scene. If I was to pull up that notes right there. Draft, sideline, Mad, set up early vision. Yeah, they're first. Top side, play something. Yeah, so Mad still pro. Yeah, Mad had a tendency to being proactive first to everything, but also would never team fight stronger than Damwon.
Yeah.
So
I
just
really liked all of Damon's team comps and stuff. It's just you even look at game by game, you look at it and you're like, oh, I can see what you're trying to do, and kind of why this works. For example, the game 3, it's like, oh yeah, Pike is a surprise, sure, but they're playing a poke comp, and Pike is very good at just hey, we got somebody really low, I can jump in, ult them, and run away.
yeah, game 3. I pulled
So
up here.
it's
Ziggy Pike.
a full poke comp plus a Pike. Okay, I can see it. It makes sense.
It was essentially it was a siege comp with a dive option, and roaming. And to me though, it felt very weird because it was just oh, you've given Ghost the chance to play super safe, as the other 4 members are going to just skirmish and shut things down. While as Mad, however, we're just oh, we're gonna team fight at neutral objectives all the time. That's because in that game they had game 3, they had a Victor, a Gragas, a Rakan, a Wukong, and a Misfortune, and that just screamed jungle choking fight at all opportunities.
Yeah, and they just want a team fight, but all Damon's doing is normally I don't like these team comps where it's you do not have a front line, so when you go to team fight,
Yeah.
they're just gonna blow up whoever that front person is.
Yep.
But the thing is, they're not really ever team fighting. They're kind of staying split up.
Yep.
And kind of just poking from different sides, and it's okay, the Jace is firing off a shock blast and then staying really far away, out of distance, and the Pike might go for a hook maybe, but then just eating away constantly, and just keeping their distance and staying away from things, and just okay, let's get our ward line down and poke, and that's hard to do, but
yes. So as we talked about the trends with this, is we're already starting to talk about specifics. Let's go from series to series then.
Sure.
Because I think we'll be a little bit more flexible with the way that we approach this. Let's talk about what I think is the most boring of the 4 series, is the T1 versus Hololive. Now, I think everyone should have expected this 100%. If you didn't expect this, I don't know what to tell you. I think you thought too much of Chovy and Deft. Or Morgan.
yeah. Well, I think my notes here is it's yeah, T1 did a really good job of kind of recognizing that it's hey, HLD needs Chovy winning mid lane and these kinds of things in order to have a chance at winning these games.
Oh yeah.
Right? We can win a lot of the other roles elsewhere. So they did this thing for example, the game 2, where the second they're going yeah, Chovy's on the block.
Yeah, they kill them every
Sandra
time.
and Poppy.
Oh yeah.
You really only need the Sandra or Poppy to deal with a LeBlanc. But it's like, no. We're picking 2 of our 5 champions right away as just like, we are going to make sure we hard counter this mid lane. Not just 1 hard counter, we're picking 2.
Yeah.
To just be like, we just need to make sure Chovy cannot do Chovy things and is pressured the entire game.
The entire time I looked at this too because they picked the Poppy after the Jin Zhao was picked. They literally could have picked most of any other option, but this was genius because the immediate thing when one of the members was being picked off is that the Jin Zhao is just going to jump in and try to use the ult. But they picked Poppy literally to counter that option. What do you do in that space? Oh, like we're going to take LeBlanc. And like, all right, cool. Well, what happens usually with this setup? Well, they have Jin Zhao who's going to come in and try to stop us. One button. No, it's not happening. I thought this was super interesting because it all immediately suggested to me that T1 recognized that they were the strongest team fighting team. Right? Like I think it's a contest between out of the 8 teams that qualified in the quarterfinals, that it was between Damwon and T1 who was the strongest team fighting team. But T1 made their name off of team fighting through the most ridiculous fringe compositions. Compositions that should never team fight. T1 will just decide, no, we'll team fight and win. And so, like, any other option that you do that is not account for T1 team fighting in your draft, what are you doing? What are you doing, guys? Right?
I think the other biggest problem here is this is the one time where like HLE trying to play to what they're good at hurt them.
Yes.
Because they're like, what are we most comfortable on? Varus. Varus isn't good right now. And the other biggest problem with it is the items. If you kind of look at it now, and I hope they fix this next season, but if you're trying to build a lethality champion, it's kind of the same thing we see in the jungle. It's, okay, sure, I want to build lethality. Maybe the Qiyana, the Talon, and these things would like to have lethality. It would be very good for them. But the problem is the second we look at this, we're like, every single lethality item in the game currently is a situational item. They're all like specific counters, right? You have like 5 legendaries to choose from, and you need like 4 for your full build, reasonably, right? Like I want to have like 4 full items, and they're all situational. So it's like collector is crit. So if I'm not building crit because I'm Qiyana or something, or I'm crit's not good with just 1 crit item, right? Then I have to pick the other 4. I have no choice.
Yep.
So it just kind of sucks because like, well, all right, say you want a team fight better? Okay, well, Gore Drinker's better than all the... It's better at everything you're trying to do. Okay, do I want a team fight? Gore Drinker's better. Do I want to sustain? Okay, Gore Drinker's better. Do I want better wave clear? Gore Drinker's better because it has an active that wave clears. No matter what I'm trying to do, Gore Drinker is better than the other options.
And Varus can't do anything with it.
Right, so Varus is like, I'm going to build Serpent's Fang, which is the very situational anti-shield item as my first item. Because it's cheaper than the other things, and like here are your options. Like, what are you going to do? Build first item Umbral Glaive? That's crap.
The thing that baffles me too is that like the obvious answer was still there and open the entire time. Ezreal.
Yeah, that my next note, like this, literally word for word. I'm like, okay, see the 10-minute team fight. T1 is super grouped up, and the Varus like used his Q once earlier when they were not grouped up, and then didn't have it off cooldown, and shot a couple auto attacks into a Gwen that's in her passive where it doesn't do anything. Or that's it. He did like no damage because he was hitting a Gwen who was in his face with the mist on, right? Yep. Well, it's like if that's an Ezreal with an ult to shoot through that whole team, or a Misfortune, or just something that could just the Aphelios, like something that has that.
Like crap. Hell, there's no Lucian is still available. Lucian is a champion I know for a fact Def knows how to use. And it wasn't there. It would have provided significantly more team fighting options.
If it's any champion who can do anything other than just hit the Gwen.
Yeah. Like, what the fuck? And I
That's a
don't want to blame this particularly just on the draft, but they really every draft comes with its pros and cons. Like Varus offers still a lot of utility for when you have the control of the pace. But Homolife has never been a team that controls the pace of a game. They never do, right? They had that inexplicable first best of 5 during the gauntlet where they did, but against Nanshin, never controlled the pace. Against T1, never controlled the pace. In the entirety of the play-ins, never controlled the pace. Groups, they never controlled the pace. They never controlled the pace of the game. They specifically wait on opportunities. And then they just never showed up.
The Varus also gets even worse. So he's also building lethality Varus, as mentioned, and I made fun of, right?
Yeah.
Here's the enemy team, right? Lysandra. What does Lysandra love to build? What does she rush?
There's a variety of things.
Her favorite item. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is armor item. Gwen has extra armor on her W at these things, right? Like gives extra armor and 2 tanks.
Yep. You're never going to hit the Aphelios.
2 tanks.
You're straight up never going to hit the Aphelios on both accounts. The fact
so what
of the
good is the lethality?
I do not understand why Homolife, after the first game, decided, oh yes, we're going to ban the same thing again.
Yeah.
There was zero adaptability. They were like, oh cool, we're going to change up our jungle to be Olaf instead of Jin Zhao. That was the problem. And T1 was like, all right, cool, you didn't fix your draft. We're just going to pick Talon now because that's going to counter Olaf. We're just going to counter your jungle because the rest of your composition is going to just not work.
Yep.
I was like, you cannot tell me from game 2 to game 3, Homolife literally upgraded the draft. They downgraded it in any given sense of the word. They drastically limited their engage options. They had even worse disengage options. They had no ability to properly peel or enable the Varus, and LeBlanc was still going to just have the same problem.
And that comes down to, yeah, they pick what they're comfortable with, but that's not what's going to win you the game, right?
Yep.
Like they're playing their team comp. Varus is, what they did good on in playoffs or whatever, but
yeah, lack of adaptability is a hallmark of a team that'll never succeed at Worlds.
Yeah. And then like even when it comes down to like game 1, it's like, okay, well you pick Aphelios and Graves, who both have the passives where like their auto attack spread, right?
That's T1 picked Aphelios Graves.
Yeah.
Game 1, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, sorry. So I was saying I particularly love the Braum into this. So like that's one thing they did totally right because it blocks the Aphelios and Graves from getting their
goes at it, yeah.
Yeah, the AoE or anything off of that. So like that's like probably like the perfect pick into that. But then like I just don't get how like there can be like this much healing in the game and it's like whatever, like 5 gore drinkers in the game and nobody has grievous wounds.
So here's the thing. I put a note here specifically talking about how like there is a significantly harder setup for any team fight or neutral objective setup here. They picked Braum, and Braum is great within whatever everything else T1 had, but they had nothing else to help set up a proper zoning tools for Misfortune, the ability for flanks for Irelia. Jin Zhao is literally just a jungle pick that was just picked because it's a priority. And Zoe still requires a whole lot of setup that like the Jhin doesn't help with, the Irelia doesn't help with, and the Braum certainly definitely does not help with. And it required a lot more setup. And they ended up benefiting from an extended laning phase in that game that on most circumstances would have meant nothing because that was primarily messed up by T1 early on. T1 again still had control of the pace the entire time of the game. But they had a hard time answering any lane assignments because every lane assignment after the laning phase just sucks for you. Zoe cannot do any laning assignments against Orianna because she doesn't have the same wave clear as Orianna. And trying to do so against an Aphelios, you run into the same problem. Aphelios is going to match lanes in any way that's much better, and if you don't have any of the setups properly, because you have none of the champions to properly set this up, and you're not ahead, because you needed to be ahead for your setups that are incredibly awkward to work. If you're not ahead, nothing Zoe's going to do is probably going to catch anybody out. And because Talon is literally moving across the map at like speeds that Jin Zhao can't match, Zoe
They just
can't.
don't work well together as a full team comp.
Yeah.
Whereas like the reason we always see Orianna with Graves is because, you know, Graves has all of his abilities, so like this AoE burst damage in like this small area. So like as soon as what we usually see is like the Orianna Shockwave, Orianna combos plus Grave combos. That just anyone who got hit by that Shockwave is dead.
Yeah.
Right? Because Graves just goes like, you know, auto QR on top of the Shockwave and like you're dead.
And Zoe
Right,
was
so-
never going to kill Graves in a 1v1 for any lane assignment. Was never going to kill Aurelius was never going to kill him because of the armor. You straight up had 0 lane assignments that were going to work afterwards after the laning phase. It was predicated
unless
100%.
Aurelia gets ahead.
Yeah, exactly. It was predicated on your laning phase getting ahead, and you didn't. I think it's a bad idea to make your drafts, and quote me on this, it's a bad idea to make your drafts dependent on your laning phase going well.
They're doing 3 things essentially. They're doing what we're comfortable with, what is an individually strong power pick, and what is a good pick, like the Braum, you know, to counter like one specific thing. But it's like, well, okay, you picked what you're comfortable with and what's powerful, but does it work as a whole cohesive team comp? No. Does it work into what the enemy team's doing? Not really, right? Like it's just sure Aurelia is strong in the meta, and maybe you can play Aurelia, but does your team work with Aurelia? Not at all.
No. Terrible. And T1.
And like I guess like only thing I can see from this is like I guess if the Aurelia gets ahead and you really properly play it as like the full out split push comp.
Yeah.
Split push comp, right? Where it's like, okay, all we're trying to do with Braum Misfortune and Xin Zhao is just disengage and stay away from things and never ever fight them and just buy your Aurelia time to win. Like Aurelia's basically has to solo win the game in the side lanes. And that's how we're playing this. But that requires Aurelia to be like unmatched in the side lanes.
So next
is your only win condition. But I don't know. Anyway.
God, I could not deal with Hummel. I was so incredible. Literally, I woke up at 8. And by the time 10:20 rolled around, it was done. And they started that series 30 minutes late. T1 had the fastest best of 5 I have witnessed in the last like couple of years. Kind of crazy. They definitely did an any % speed run. We then head to what I think is everybody's favorite series of these quarterfinals. Not particularly my favorite series, but it should be most people's favorite series. And the one that I'm pretty sure I called completely correct was going to go all the way to 5 games. It was the EDG versus RNG. Any team could have gotten through. What a banger. And how many times can I bang my head on a desk from teams just being hard-headed?
Well, isn't that what the banger means?
Oh, yeah.
I
have to hit. Damn it. Oh, God. It's freaking terrible is what that was.
Is that not how you describe a banger?
That's not how I describe it. Bang, bang, bang. What did you think of it? Because there's a lot of games in this particular series compared to the other ones. I think particularly that both teams had a very strong idea of what to do on their side of the map. Like, neither team was ever going to, if I see this correctly, at least in Twist of Fate, only in one game did Lee Sin go through. Every other game, Twisted Fate and Lee Sin were banned on red side. Both of these
Yeah.
teams recognized that side lane pressure was the blue team's go to win. And for the red side, it was roaming picks and team fights. I think that was the most interesting takeaway from this. Neither of these teams came in with like a specific style.
Mhm.
And I think this is the only time we're going to actually see something like this as a decision. Neither team came in with like a specific style. They both came in with like, this is how the red side needs to draft, and this is how the blue side needs to draft.
Yeah, that's fair. I didn't specifically write down which games were which team was on which side, so I'd have to specifically check sides.
Oh, I have
Um,
the wiki in front of me with the sides themselves, but I also wrote them down in my
yeah,
notes.
because like, I guess I don't specifically look at like I'll look at like this was the first overall pick or the last overall pick or that kind of thing, but not necessarily the whole like side versus side. Um, like this is what I was talking about, like the engaged supports versus the enchanters and stuff, right? Like, and it's the because EDG's picking enchanters and they're not playing tanks is the difference, right? So like we get these team comps where it's uh their only front line is just an Olaf and everything else is like as squishy as can be, or just a Jarvan and everything else is as squishy as can be.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, an example of why Ezreal works. The day after, Death must be kicking himself in the pants.
And they kind of did this every single game.
Yeah.
Right. They're doing this. They only have one champion who can actually be in the middle of the enemy team. Like even we're getting to what am I looking at? Like game 4, it's just a Xin Zhao, and then I guess you can say Graves is frontline, right? Like,
yeah,
is what we're looking at. Same thing. Like if it does the Graves count is what you're looking at, but
I mean,
and that's kind of what you get from having the full out enchanters, and it's just you're relying on every single game essentially. They're relying on healing to be their front line, right? In when it comes to a big team fight.
Yes.
Which is interesting. Again, this comes down to like the whole thing I noticed basically throughout Worlds is people build their first 2 core items and then get Grievous Wounds if they need it. Like we're not seeing the 5-minute Bramble Vests or anything like ever. Which kind of just surprises me when we're seeing some of these team comps where it's like, okay, the enemy team has, I don't know, Xin Zhao, Yuumi, and a Renekton, or I'm making something up, but you know what I mean? It's like, or like a Silas mid or something. It's like the whole team is just doing this, and it's like, and you're not building the Grievous Wounds till your 3rd item.
I think it's also pretty interesting because like RNG also still picked Enchanters. Picked Enchanters in game.
Yeah, the one game.
In the one game. Because I do want to. So red side, the Twisted Fate Lee Sin was always banned. The one ban that RNG consistently took off every time, which informs exactly how I knew EDG was going to be playing side lanes primarily, which is why their enchanters work so well. Engage supports when you're playing 1-3-1s are either useless or you're ahead. You're one or the other. While as enchanter supports are good ahead or behind when you're playing a 1-3-1. They're necessary for able to like sustain your win conditions. And EDG in all 5 games play compositions that benefit from a 1-3-1 or 1-4 style of approach. And like they really dedicate to that idea when they're on blue side. And they make sure to get rid of anything that would be skirmish heavy for when they're banning, because that's usually the counter to 1-3-1s is if you're able to like create lopsided fights from one side of the map and you're able to pick somebody off and create pressure from that way. So like they would ban the Galio, they would ban Galio on every time they were on blue side. Yeah, every single time they're on blue side. Just as an example. They would ban Nautilus if they had the chance. They ban Jarvan. Anything that would be like specifically goes to make a lopsided fight to counter any side lane pressure, because EDG's MO during this entire series was side lane pressure, and that is benefited and supplemented in a 1-3-1 by an Enchanter being present.
Yep.
And I think that was like a great strategy that probably would have worked out way better for RNG if they were more consistent in the way that they approached their drafting for Engage. Because they inconsistently would pick skirmish compositions, which is really good, but also team fight compositions. If I remember my notes correctly, and I'm just going to pull them up right quick. Securing RNG rounded up a composition with a 1-3 style that has awkward team fighting, right? I put awkward in the words that were put up. Game 2. Let's see here. And then you have RNG round 2, surprise Annie, strong roaming with team fight engagements along with stronger early priority game around neutrals. You can tell that RNG had an idea about how to approach the game around neutral objectives, but really wanted to have Engage set up, but they were inconsistent from game to game.
Kind of like like with the Annies, for example, it's like that reliable, that reliable stun and these kind of things, right? It's being able to set up for these team comps, because we're looking at EG's comps, like I was saying, and saying, well, they have a Enchanter, and their only front line is their Gore Drinker jungler and stuff, right? So it's like if the Annie can get to anybody who is not their jungler, like literally anybody, 4 out of 5 champions, they will die.
Yep.
So it's realistically, we should be able to win team fights whenever there's like a big group of people, because we can just blow someone up, and there's not a ton specific they can do about that, other than the fact that then EDG has to rely on things like stopwatches and Lulu ults and a few of these things, which are really long cooldowns, but because RNG isn't able to find, they're not able to find enough opportunities to get these kind of picks, and to get like the Annie the first time didn't really quite do enough, is when EDG has the chance, right? Because it's like, well, maybe I only have one stopwatch, but that's all I need, because you only ever like found me in a vulnerable position once.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's the difference there. It just, because after like I've been noticing this like kind of professional play like worldwide, the whole thing, where it's like the okay, Gore Drinker Sterax is so good, for example, as like that 2 items that like I will do it every single game no matter what, and I will not delay anything to do it. It's like I must have my Gore Drinker Sterax, for example, as a jungler. So it's like they could be, their team comp could be like Yuumi, Soraka, and 3 Gore Drinker champions, and I'm crushing it, right? Like, because I need my Gore Drinker Sterax. And it's even like the little things where I'm looking at, like, I think it's game 3. RNG's team comp is a Galio that is not taking farm.
Yep.
Right? So Galio's not taking farm.
Yep.
And then all AD.
Yep. This
right?
actually, game 3 teeved me off a little bit, because every other game, all 4 other games, RNG is like, we're going to pick either awkward team fight or straight up strong team fighting with neutral objectives in mind, and skirmishes that are to stop side lane pressure. And they were like, no, we're going to play a 1-4 composition, put Lucian topside. And yeah, Galio gives up farm. They have a bunch of AD on their sides. They don't have the resources to properly like bolster the Galio to be a tank, or to have Xin Zhao be anything relevant other than our Gore Drinker machine, which Olaf is also a Gore Drinker machine.
It's just a bunch of physical damage, right? And like the Graves has Merc Treads, for example. Like, the issues are illusion and a misfortune. Like, I guess there is, CC, but like it doesn't help you with Xin Zhao.
No.
So the only thing that's helping you with is it's just the Rakan alt and the Galio taunt. Those are the only 2 abilities that the Merc Tread actually affects.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's like, is the Rakan alt and the Galio taunt more important than you know, 90% plus of their damage.
I think to me the disconnect was when I
Like,
first saw. I think I'm gonna read my notes, even though I already made a video with all of my notes being read. I said round one, RNG picks a flexible core with no solid look to any role solidified other than with the jungle, and they have good re-engage options. And I was like, that's great, fantastic. They can totally. And then they just switch around and decide that we're going to pick Misfortune Rakan. And so that tells me immediately they're just going to give up on re-engage altogether or even engage, and everything is reactive. There is a clear disconnect and understanding as they're just automatically reacting. They're like, okay, cool. They have Aphelios, Graves, and Olaf. We know immediately they're going to always go for Dragons and Heralds 100% of the time. There's literally no other reason to pick those three champions that early. It's a lot of AD, no AP options, super easy to ban out their mid laner, and the support to help supplement the things that they need to do.
and it's like it is a close game, reasonably, sort of. Like you have a chance, but then once you start getting towards the late game, like Olaf is not supposed to be that good in the late game, but it's like all your damage is AD, and then like the Galio and the Rakan are there to like provide crowd control because they're not building like AP or anything.
Yeah.
And like, okay, you have an Olaf with 300 armor, Gore Drinker, and Sterax. How are you killing that Olaf?
My
Ever?
the words I put in exactly were RNG need control early or could just fall behind again.
It's like he's immune to crowd control, has too much armor, and then has this Sterax shield, has a Gore Drinker, has like Conqueror, has you're killing him how?
Like after that game ended, it was like, wow, I predicted that they were gonna fall again, or like if they didn't have full control early. I said RNG played well to their composition, but didn't ban around the answers that could happen. Although draft was not the main cause of loss here, overview of their draft could help. It was like, if you want to play topside, you have to play topside, but just like your carries need to play like team fight. Where's the team fighting? Your Misfortune's not going to be able to team fight. You can't team fight with Galio. Your Lucian is side laning all the time, or should be. You have no. If you're going to play topside, and like, thank God the game after that, they take Kennen and they're able to play topside carry and just transition that to like an actual team fight scenario. Because, dear Lord, just like, I must say though, both of these teams adapt game from game very well.
Yep.
Which is more to say than all the other losing teams. Well, that's not true. Cloud9 adapts pretty well. But like, between Hama Life and Mad Lions, I don't think Mad adapted pretty well from game to game.
That's most of my stuff, but I'm just like, even. Oh, I guess this is also game 3. But like, if you know you're playing to Lucian top, if you're going to be trying to be like, okay, we're putting all of our resources into top lane and we're not going to have like jungle attention bot, why Rakan? Like, if you're playing if you know you're going to get dived, you're very likely to get dived, right?
The Alistar's still
why
available.
Rakan?
The Alistar's still, and we know they'll play
Brom's
Alistar.
available. Alice, yeah. Like,
there's so many things here. I'm like, I would not have been mad at a Brom here or an Alistar. Literally,
like, okay,
all of the things.
Sure, Thresh is banned, and
Gragas.
Yumi,
they could have picked
whatever.
Gragas support.
But, like, you're playing full the top side. We're going Galio's gonna alt top side. We're going full jungle attention top side. And Misfortune can like alt waves and stuff. Like, okay, sure, it's not like Ezreal level of safety, but like it's something. But then why Rakan?
Yeah, I don't.
Like, again, it's for like team fight and stuff later. But
do you see how crazy it is that that EDG recognized that this blunder? Like, I said that they were going to do something absolutely flexible. They have flexibility all across the board on that round 1 pick, and then their round 2 bans is to get rid of Ziggs and Nami. They're like, oh, they'll want their bot lane to be safe. They like immediately knew that wasn't going to the bot side. They're like, oh, they're gonna play a 1-4 composition. Ban Ziggs, ban Nami. Gonna make sure they have no survivability and no safety. And I'm like, what? What were you predicting? Like, my notes specifically on those bands were like, draft. Round 2 bans from EDG suggest they want to focus pressure on the bot side and want to play more for sieging. That's what I thought they were aiming for. They were like, oh, cool. There's no flexibility. There's like a bunch of flexibility for RNG and EDG ban these two things, suggesting they're gonna just like go for bot lane all the time. To me, my brain was like, oh, they pick Lucian bot lane, but they might think that it goes mid lane, and they got rid of the Zig, so they're just gonna go at it. And no, instead you just have like 5 head, and they're like, no, RNG is just gonna be stupid with their picks and do.
But to be fair, their game 4 when they do the Kennen, it's like that's actually a great idea because you notice Kennen burst damage, Jarvan burst damage, Aphelios
Yes.
reasonably can do burst damage when he starts ulting and queuing people and stuff, and Annie's full burst damage. Well, EDG's only frontline is healing, as we discussed. So if their only frontline is they're trying to heal up the damage, if we just pick everything that has just maximum burst damage, you don't get a chance to heal.
Yeah, exactly.
Great.
Like,
yeah, if you give Graves a chance to have his 40% lifesteal, it's not going to be a fun day.
Honestly, there's like some
But if
really
it's just
cool.
Kennen, Jarvan, Annie in your face, you're not lifestealing.
There's some great stuff across the board from both of these teams, but I think just Game 3 is the most egregious draft from RNG.
Yeah, which is why we focus on that. Yep.
And it's just, I think, like, unfortunately, I do think that's the thing that, like, solidified EDG's spot in this best of 5. I bet you RNG wins that game, they win the next game, they're through. They've won 3 games in a row. Or they've won 3 games at that point. It would have been a 3-1. We wouldn't be talking about it. There's a bunch of what ifs, of course, but like they still adapt. Both of these teams are still adapting fairly well from game to game. And like I mentioned, that is unlike, however, Mad Lions versus Damwon Kia. Because I think that's we've gone through that game fairly thoroughly. We should jump to the next one. Where I gotta say that Damwon make a perfect example. Like, game 1, I'm pretty sure is just a stomp, if I remember correctly. This
Yep.
We head to Damwon. Yeah, game 1 set up some solid early vision. Yeah, there's like no. It was just it was just a clean game from them. It was like from Good Gold. I do want to commend, though. I have a bunch of times in my notes for this series that Matt has some very creative map movement.
Yeah, for sure. And I like they're doing. You can see even like so there's some cool stuff. Like even just looking at the game 1, it's like okay, Matt immediately goes Aphelios, Graves, Orianna. And this guy's like okay, Graves, Orianna is like okay, we can just burst someone and kill them. But the second you have those 3, it's like well, they're kind of immobile and they need peel. Like they don't have a lot of crowd control other than, there's the Orianna Shockwave and like Gravitum and stuff. But like they need peel.
Yeah.
Right? So Damwon immediately says, okay, what can like peel the best? Right? And like what do we can like actually protect the Aphelios and stuff? Thresh is fairly obvious, and then Zinzao from the jungle.
Yep.
Right? Those are the 2 best, best bands there, because it's saying, okay, those are the 2 things that are going to be able to push us away the most, right? And then all they're saying is, okay, we need to be able to get to that back line, right? And just dive on them. So we go Rakan, who has that long-range explosive engage, and the Gwen, who can, go immune and run at you. And it's just saying, okay, we're going to just full-on do everything we can to just jump on their face because they don't have the peel to prevent us. And then the other thing that I really noticed and loved that game was the Lee Sin and the Rakan were always playing together.
Yes.
And they stayed together the whole game. And it's, okay, Lee Sin safeguards, Rakan jumps to him, or Rakan dashes forward, Lee Sin jumps to him. So they're dashing off of each other, and they're using their abilities to bounce off of each other when they're dashing. even to get around the map and stuff, which is just awesome. And they're saying you don't have the peel to be able to like prevent us from just getting on you, and that it's just Lee Sin plus Rakan. And once they're fed, it's like, hey, we have enough damage that just the Lee Sin is able to kill you.
I think it's one of those. It's really crazy because like I look at this game as a show of like,
and that's why the Ghost is amazing too, because it's saying like Ghost is not normally what you run.
Yeah,
I think it's usually Ignite, right? Because it's saying, okay, I'm going to be fighting you, and I need to win. Like I need to be able to try to like win this fight,
you. Yeah,
right? But Ghost is just saying that like I'm gonna run at you, and because you're just some ADCs and an Orianna, you can't really stop me from just running at you. Right? Like you don't have the tools to prevent me from doing this. And also, this is cool because remembering Gwen's mist blocks auto attacks, like it doesn't take damage, meaning that Leona can't Q you.
Yes.
Same thing as like Jack's Counter-Strike.
It was beautiful.
Leona cannot. It's like why playing into Jack sucks is Leona, because you can't stun him when he's in his Counter-Strike. Gwen does the same thing. You can't stun the Gwen.
I do want to say though, this is mostly, and I think I've mentioned it off camera to you guys a whole bunch, but Koma's my favorite coach, hands down.
Yeah.
He is straight up also the most chaotic drafter in the world. This is all of his drafts in this series, chaos. And I know that he's not the one on stage dictating it, but I know 100% that if they deviated at all, he would be like, "The fuck is wrong with you guys?" But I look at this draft, and immediately my thought is, Damwon Kia are going to play a 1-4 composition, trying very hard to contest all of the neutral objectives as a 4 weak side, while Mad Lions are 100% saying that we will have full control of the pace at any given point of the game because we have a stronger idea of how to rotate and do lane matchups with the composition we have. Literally look at Damwon's draft for game 1. Look at Hummel Life's draft for game 1. And you start seeing very similar issues that would pop up on a normal circumstance, right? But because Hummel Life play passively, they're not able to do any of the setups that are necessary for them to do like any side lane shenaniganries or any particular type of lane matchups that would benefit from this kind of composition. They don't play topside. But Damwon immediately answer all of the things that they need to do, right? They don't dictate so many resources bot side that don't need to be dictated there. They're making sure the Gwen is ahead because the linchpin of this composition functioning is the Gwen. If your Gwen has no gold, you are always going to be playing at a deficit if you're on 5v5.
I mean, also the Fed Lee Sin. But you're not relying on that. It's just, okay, once we have that, it becomes a win condition because, like, if that's a flash as a Felios or something, like, there's not a thing he can do.
Yep.
So, yeah, they're not relying on it and they weren't expecting it, but it's like, it becomes an extra win condition.
On top of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, like, I look at Maz's draft and I go, wow, beautiful, simple, brilliant, easy breezy, beautiful cover girl.
And that's kind of the whole series, though, is because like the second we get back to like game 2, it's like, okay, sure, Mad has the lead. They should win this game, and they're playing around their macro in the early game and stuff.
Game 2
is great.
Game 2, I love Damwon's draft a little more, but I love both drafts. This is less chaos than it is in their first draft.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's again coming back down to, okay, they have the Orianna and the Misfortune and these. They have the squishy champions and they don't have a ton of CC, right? Misfortune doesn't have a stun or anything. Neither does Orianna. Neither does the Jace. They just have a little bit of displacement, right? So basically, what they're saying is, Kennen just runs at you.
Yep.
And from crazy distances, Lee Sin, same thing. I'm gonna dash kick you, right? Azir flash alting. We've all seen like the sick like Azir jumping into a whole team, throw them all back, right? Jhin, same thing. Like I'm alting you from super far away, slowing you down to set everybody else up. and Leona has the super long range ultimate. So it's saying, okay, when we have our ultimates up, which is what this relies on, okay, do we all have R? If yes,
Then go.
then go. And it's just that really simple. It's like, okay, we have our ults. Okay, Jin, slow them. Leona, see if you can land a long range solar flare, and then just we can either just shuffle someone, we can kick them, we can cannon. Like they have different options depending on which order they're using their ultimates in, and these kind of things.
Yeah.
Right. And even if like normally it's just like, okay, we're worried about a cannon, right? Okay, well, there's ways we can play the game if we're worried about a cannon jumping on us. Okay, but you need to be worried about the cannon. You need to be worried about the Azir shuffling your whole team. You need to be worried about the Lee Sin, insecting you, right? You need to be worried about Jin's fourth shot flying at you. Like, there's so many different things to worry about when it comes to all the different engage options that they can play around.
I think what's also interesting is that Mad actually almost played this near perfectly in that game.
It was definitely the best game.
That was their strongest game. And I think, what was the wording I put here? I said, for game 2, the wording I put here, right, here we go. I said, Mad with incredible vision now can properly set up for their Baron, and instead keep trading 1-for-1 and can't secure it. And as we enter the late game transition at 22 minutes, Mad have a 6k lead, but are trending towards even trades, and that is not a good sign. And I put in even earlier, as we head into the mid-game transition at 11 minutes, Mad need to use their 3.5k lead and keep up the pace or lose out to scaling team fight. And immediately, like I say this, as they're entering the 22-minute, they start losing it. As they enter the 22 minutes, though, the first 15 minutes, Mad are playing this exactly to a T of what they need to do. But they start slowing down their gameplay instead of keeping it up, right?
But, like, you know what happens when Mad finally, like, gets their wins? It's flanking Kennen, Azir shuffling back, and immobile carry. Sorry?
You said Mad. You mean Damwon?
Sorry, when Damwon starts winning fights.
Yeah.
It's like, we look at the bot, like, when they first win the fight, when they're, like, down 4v5 with a big gold disadvantage. Okay, well, what happens in that fight? Like, Azir shuffles humanoids Orianna back.
Yep.
Lee Sin gets a kick on an immobile carry under the tower.
Yep.
Right? And Kennen gets a flank teleport.
Yep.
Right? So, like, all of these things, it's like, well, it doesn't matter, that they're behind by this much. It's like a flanking Kennen teleport is still going to kill your Flash's AD carry. Right? Like,
yeah,
that's what he does.
It's just
so it's the best thing we can say about that is Damwon's recognizing, hey, we lost our support. We're not in a good position. You'd normally say like, hey, okay, we lost our support. It's a 4v5. We can't contest Baron. We got to retreat.
You know what's crazy?
Most teams would be like,
that particular same engage that you just described cost them the soul point. They had let Damwon grab 2 Drakes for the early game, and by all means, that was the actual right moves to do for them. But then, as the late game starts going through, they don't make any contentions on, 1, increasing the pace, but 2, of making sure that the win conditions, which are starting to ramp up for Damwon, are shut down completely. Damwon get their soul point at 20. What is it again? It was like 25 and a half minutes.
What game are you talking about? Game
2.
Isn't game 2 the one where Mad has Mountain Soul?
Mad never gets souls. Game 2 is the one where Damwon has the Azir cannon. They keep doing these crazy engages that bring them back into the game. Damwon gets soul in this game.
Mad has Mountain Soul. So I'm.
Nope. Yeah, no, at some point, at 25 minutes and 30 seconds, Damwon has soul point. Take a look at that game 2 VOD. Literally. Oh, wait, no, you're correct. I'm reading my notes wrong. You're correct. But
like, do they have it
Mad is the one that has a soul point. Ignore everything I said beforehand. No, you're correct. Mad do end up with the soul in that game. I don't know how I misread my own notes. I literally have them here. Yeah. Damwon at 23 minutes 30 seconds. Punisher greedy engage. They win for 2-2, showing that they still get the soul point. Mad still get the soul point and have options to pressure globally.
Yep.
Right. So this is totally different problem though. Mad have the options to pressure globally all over the place, and then they don't win any of the fights.
And that's what I'm saying. I think this is like probably the most important point on like why Damwon is good and like how they're able to win these games is they're saying, okay, what just happened? We lost our support. They're winning the fight. You know, they have a big gold lead and it's a 4v5. Most teams go, okay, we can't do anything about that. Right? But what Damwon says is, you know what? They used a bunch of like flashes and ultimates to get that pick and to get this all set up. We still have a cannon with ult and teleport.
Yep.
We still have our kick and we still have our Zero shuffle. So even though we're down like 10,000 gold and it's a 4v5, this is still the fight we want to take because we have our like engage options available where we can pick off the flashless Orianna, for example. Like very few teams would say, "Hey, this is the play." Right?
Yeah. No, it's crazy. Yeah, at 31 minutes, Mad gets the soul, but they've lost a 5-for-1 team fight with 5 members that get the Baron for themselves, and then eventually lose a 3-for-3 fight with the turret taken. And then just Damwon managed, despite losing the soul, Damwon have gained control of the pace of the game after losing soul.
And like that, and like it's not just the abilities. It's like what they did in that fight with the 5-for-1 is they used both the Azir shuffle and the Lee Sin kick were used to push people back into the cannon.
Yep.
So they used all of their displacement in order to push everybody into the cannon so that the cannon damage could go off and kill them. It's like they weren't trying to specifically, you know, okay, this is the main abilities, like the Lee Sin kick or something. It's like, no, just push them all together, push them all back into the same group for the cannon.
Yeah.
Right? Like the timing it takes, the coordination to say like, okay, you know, it's just
it's
like I'm the Azir. I'm not trying to do damage myself, which is weird because like, hey, I'm Azir, I'm the carry. It's no. The cannon's the one who's actually going to carry this fight. So I need to use my abilities to set up the cannon.
Just crazy. And then game 3 is much worse for Mad Lions.
Yeah, well, that comes down to the same thing. It's like, okay, you have Misfortune, you have Wukong.
I think this is actually the sloppiest game out of Damwon that we've seen the entire tournament.
Game 3?
This was the sloppiest game out of them. Damwon picks Pyke and has Ziggs, and they have Jason, Lee Sin, and Syndra. That just screams to me, we have 3 people that dive in, everybody else is just going to siege.
I'm saying it's like Jace is like poke and can kill towers.
Yep.
Right? Syndra is the same thing, can get off the poke, can like land long range stuns and stuff, and can kill towers because AP ratios. And Ziggs is poke and killing towers, right?
Yeah. It's just sieging.
It's just sieging and poke is all we're trying to do. Is just we're a full out siege comp, and then because of Lee Sin and Pyke, we can finish off kills.
Yep.
And they still have disengage, right? Like Pyke is because they're split up, because they're like one person's over here and one person's over here. If they're gonna like try to engage on the Syndra who's over here or something, I'm hoping my hands are on the screen. I think they are. If the Syndra's over here, the Pyke actually is pulling them away, or like we can Lee Sin kick. Their disengage options that also allow you to finish off kills or threaten dives.
Right. I think that it's just that they're very weak and conditional in disengages. It's not ones that I would bank on. The main focus of what I see in this composition is re-engage primarily.
Yeah. And normally you'd say, yes, that on its own might not be the best, but because of what they're playing into, right? Because the Wukong wants everybody pulled together. The Victor has the AoE, wants everybody pulled together. Same with, right? The whole enemy team is wanting to get us to group up. Rakan, trying to pull us together to try to land multi-person Ws,
Yeah.
right?
I think
Misfortune wants to land the multi-person alts. Like, they want Damwon grouped up. So Damwon's entire team comp is, well, Pike can be far away from the Ziggs who can be off this. Like, we don't ever need to be balled up.
Yeah.
We can be all kind of like far enough apart that we're all a misfortune alt apart from each other.
I think this also
and we
shows.
work like this.
I think this also shows a huge. You know how sometimes I'll talk about the failed circle test, the one that's like super unobvious about the situation? I don't think that this combination of Wukong, Misfortune, and Victor is great, right? The Rakan and Misfortune is very obvious, like, oh yeah, cool, Rakan can actually hold people in, and then the Misfortune alt will do its thing.
Yep.
The Wukong, however, is like a people call it the better Malphite or alt. I don't think that's true. Primarily because it is easier to get out of. The knockup is not as long, and the amount of re-engage and the amount of self-peel Wukong is dependent on with that situation, means that it's rarely used as the primary engage. Victor's alt and Misfortune's alt are drastically different sizes that require so much setup for them to both hit the same targets at the same time. And Gragas ruins all of their game. This is a mark of you pass the circle test in bot lane, fail it everywhere else. On paper, this looks like a strong, easy press R to win draft. But I think instead this is a case of Homo Life but Europe. They're playing comfort without taking into account what the overall does to the entire comp.
Yep. So like when we're seeing them approaching fights, like we're seeing, like a 32 minute or something, it's like the Syndra is in mid lane, the Pike is, basically in bot lane, and the Lee Sin is like halfway between both of them, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to time like they're rarely ever, actually getting close enough to each other to take, play into the AoE team fight comp, right? Like, even when they're all trying to fight a dragon, it's okay, maybe 3 people are grouped up, but the Pike's way off to one side behind the dragon, and the Lee Sin is back in the other jungle. Or like we're supposed to be seeing them. It's really cool how they play it. It's like it's more important for us to just deny
the
their win
opportunities.
condition,
Yeah.
and then we can play siege and deny their win condition, and that's enough. Right?
Yes.
So it's
I
even
think,
if it was possibly their
yeah, I think it was. This is C9. What the? I think it's important to really consider the fact that like Damwon is the most coordinated team we have.
And this is what it needs. You need coordination in order to.
Or else this composition, most people will be like, it sucks.
Because Cloud9 plays this way and will split up in the face of misfortunes and stuff, but they don't full on like coordinating a poke comp to land your poke at the same time is not the easiest thing.
It's
Damwon does that properly.
Yeah. It's like a craft. It's like watching somebody blow glass. It's mesmerizing, and at any point you're like, this is dangerous. What the hell are you doing? By all means, Mad have a very good understanding of what their approaches are supposed to be, but I think because of the events of Game 1 and Game 2, Game 3 is not great. They do much better in terms of punishing Damwon because I think this is still their sloppiest game. Their coordination with this is still crazy good, but they have moments where like I think they're just a little too confident with how their game is going. Yeah. Because like Damwon has a 10k gold lead at 21 minutes with 2 Drakes and a full Baron setup ready to go. But they fuck up that Baron setup. It's just and then lose 4-0. There's a lot to be said about how Damwon or how Mad had properly understood the ways to approach their win condition and how to punish or stop the win conditions from Damwon. But
Yep.
it's like they didn't have enough gas in the tank left after those first two games and
Yeah.
couldn't consistently pick it up.
It's just like you don't see this positioning usually ever, which is why I'm so like caught up in it. It's because like the Lee Sin is exactly a max range safeguard away from his teammates on like multiple sides or something, right?
Yeah,
So
it's wild.
because you normally see like, okay, if someone's split pushing or if someone's elsewhere, they're just gonna teleport in or something, right? Or like if we're splitting up, we're splitting up, and we're not playing a team fight. But it's like they are playing the team fight. They are landing their damage at the same time and actually landing poke in the same person. It's just, and the Lee Sin is in range to safeguard, but he's like, okay, or like if Pike lands a hook, the Ziggs and stuff is close enough to follow up on it.
Yep.
But he's like, you know, to the side a bit and like a max range Q away.
Yeah.
So they're recognizing like, okay, we're close enough to be able to support each other with our long range damage, but staying far enough split up that like when like Rakan and Wukong are going in, they're hitting at most the Wukong like they never hit more than 2 people ever. Like the whole game, they're never going to hit a 3-person Wukong or Rakan anything because we're never close enough for them to do that.
Except for the one
And
Baron fight.
Sure, but like Baron does that to you. It kind of forces it sometimes.
So, with that, it's Damwon's crazy.
Yeah.
They're good. They're good. Yeah.
How do we lose this game? Right? That's
Yeah.
the saying. How do we lose this game? Okay, 5-person Rakan ult. Don't give him the 5-person Rakan ult.
Yeah, it's super easy. Yeah. As we get to
Easier said.
as we get to the spicy, controversial game, you and I had this conversation. We were both on the same side, saying GENG had this series, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You'd be mad to think that Cloud9 were gonna win, right? Lo and behold, my surprise when like 2/3 of the analyst desk in Iceland are like, Cloud9's got this. I'm like, all right, guys, I understand GENG is not all that hot, but I don't think that they're less coordinated than Cloud9 to any degree where I think Cloud9's going to pull it off. You guys are wild to think 3-0 Cloud9. That was some spicy takes. Everybody going like, it's the last hope for the West. Cloud9's on a hot streak. Cloud9 was on a luck streak. They had all the ingredients to look like an incredible coordinated team, except for the coordination. That's funny, right? It's a Scar quote almost. They do great in terms of wave manipulation, understanding like lane matchups, incredible vision, proper setups. Never once do they ever engage in unison. Ever. They're always miscommunicating. It's so frustrating to look at. Like, what's going on? I'm like, God damn.
Yeah, because like they do such a good job with like all the other things, right? Like Sven will never die to ganks.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Like, right? Like these kinds of things that it's just like getting a lot of these basics down. That enable you to do this, right? Like what I was saying earlier in the tournament is a lot of the Western teams where they were losing was to these slow games where like an HLE or a T1 or something just kind of slowly is like we're building up like a 1 CS per minute lead. And by 30 minutes, we have a 30 CS lead, which is enough to matter.
Yep.
Right? This kind of thing. And Cloud9 is the one team that is like, it's just that little difference of them not giving up 1 CS per minute.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, it's so little.
There's so much. Like, I will say here that this was not at all how Cloud9 played during their playoffs. they were not this fundamentally sound. They didn't have this kind of vision play. They didn't have this kind of wave manipulation or their laning. This was a very kind of like middle-isk team that like beat by accident almost another team that would have successfully done much more coordination. But they came in and had great vision, great wave setups. They did almost everything else except actually play as a team.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think we can skip game 2 just completely. There's literally nothing about game 2 that's worth talking about, given how royally that was fucked over. Like I don't care about like Perks as a player with a pedigree. He gained most of his titles playing a completely different role. And to expect him to have the same kind of like prestige or like impact playing mid lane again. Like I know I said I wanted to see him in mid lane. I did not ever think that people would think of him as like the difference maker in mid lane. To the point where like that's the kind of status they were like, oh, he's gonna come to like NA and stomp everybody in mid lane, and then, like that definitely was not the case, or that he would like help bring Cloud9 to some incredible success, and by all means, I don't think that's like a fair assessment of what we should have expected from this guy.
I think Perks is kind of like he's the same as Huni. It's just he just move it back like a couple of years, right? So
Yes,
you move it back. Huni was like the world champion and came off these undefeated things, and like, but the difference is, okay, he's the one who's playing Lucian top in like what season 3 and these kind of things, right? Where it's like
season 4, yeah.
Oh, what's he doing? And it's like he's going in to be like a lot of professional players. If it's like if this is a risky play, if this is I do not know what the guaranteed outcome of this is, I shouldn't try it. Perks and Hooney are the people who are like, I'm gonna see this out and see what happens, right?
Sure.
I'm gonna go for the extra play, and a lot of the times because it's not the way most people play, professional players who are into this routine of like, this is a 50-50, they're gonna back off and like just an early Perks and Hooney will like go for like the early level 4. I'm gonna take a tower shot to try to finish the solo kill,
Right.
and these kind of things, right? So they're like, oh, they're doing the things people aren't expecting, and then by the time it's like the 3rd or 4th year of it, people are like, oh, yeah, it's Perks is going to like stay in the minion wave as Yasuo to try to outplay us. He's not gonna do the safe thing and just flash away. He's gonna be like, I have a minion wave. I have like 8 dashes. Come at me. Because that's what he does.
I'm just like.
So as soon as everyone else in the world has a read on like its Perks, he's gonna try it. Right? They're able to say, okay, go for the gank because Perks might just try the 1v2 outplay that he probably shouldn't do, but he's Perks, so he'll do it.
I cannot. I just can't with this guy. Like, oh my god.
And that's like, but the thing is, at the same time, that is a compliment because like when I was saying earlier about like the thing I talked about for a while, I was like, yeah, he's a Tryndamere with flash up and they had no cooldowns. If he had just gone for the 1v3, he probably wins that. If that's Perks, he probably does that. And when he does that, he looks amazing because nobody else would actually say, hey, you know what? This is a 1v3 I can win. Right? And that's why he's so good, is because when it works, we're like, who else would have actually known that works?
But that's the thing, right? Like, it immediately gets caught out by every other person who realize, oh, he doesn't actually play anything else about his role better than anybody else. In fact, he's kind of middling more than anything else. He approaches the game in ways that are like necessary for almost everybody else to actually do, which is proactive and even taking the chance to make risks that are necessary to get the game going forward without anything else to back up that he should be as good as he's lauded to be, right? Because GENG on their end is the slowest team in the fucking world, and they yet somehow speed ran through this team almost as fast as T1. They were like 30 minutes slower, and that's saying something. This was a 3-0. They had like, or not 30, they were like 15 minutes slower. They had like an extra 5 minutes to all their games. And given how slow GENG is as a team in general, like they are even less active than Hummel Life, right? Hummel Life at least has time to set up. They will recognize mistakes. GENG will just kind of like let things happen, man. Totally doable. And Cloud9 is the aggressive team. How the fuck did they lose this one?
That's the double-edged sword, because I was saying earlier, okay, they don't give up that 1 CS per minute that the other teams do. Okay, how do you not give... Where does that come from, right? How do you not give up that couple of extra CS that all the other Western teams are losing in these lanes?
Yeah.
Well, it's because they're actually staying in their lanes that extra 3 seconds longer every time. Okay. Usually that's good, and that's helpful in a lot of these times because they're not giving up that little bit of gold.
Yeah.
But when there's these like, skirmishes breaking out, it's like, oh, is this an all-in? Do I need to be here for this? And their teleports are on average like that 2 to 3 seconds later. That's game deciding, right? So because they're losing these fights, because Perks and Fudge are saying, I'm going to finish clearing this wave for like that extra 2 seconds I need to just do that one quick spell or two, right? To like get that extra couple CS before I teleport in. And we've seen that many times. So like that extra little bit that gives them the edge and like not giving up these small advantages will cost them the big advantages.
Yep.
Because they're late for the team fight.
Oh yeah. I think the one game though that I think is worth noting out of all of them. First game, nothing much worth noting. Second game, we can just ignore that. It never existed. Third game though is when Cloud9 actually has their shit together and still loses. Because GENG are more proactive in this game than they are in any of the other ones. They're behind, but they play behind very well. And I don't think it's a topic that's been talked about by GENG because they haven't had many games between playoffs to now. And they were kind of flip-floppy in groups more than anything else. But they play from behind very well. They're in a region that requires doing so frequently. Right? And like you can loud it up to being like, no. BDD won this game with his Zoe. And my question here to all of you is, how did they win from one sleepy bubble? Because Cloud9 did not actually do enough to bring the pace of the game to a close at any point. Right? GENG was keeping up with them. I think like the wording I put in my notes here was, right, C9 are grabbing more leads to balloon well, but are not properly setting up neutrals, and they get poked and picked out frequently, and it creates strong team fighting options that BDD takes advantage of. Like, you cannot tell me here, like, GENG have individual win, like their win conditions ahead of the marker at any given point. Their ruler is super ahead with Jin. And they're trading in ways that are like questionable for both sides. So as much as like C9 has the control of the pace, they never accelerate the pace in a way that nullifies any particular trades that are being done from the other end. And GENG are just like, well, we're just going to keep up with you. Sure, you have control of the pace, but we're always right there.
And that comes back down to these team comps, right? We're in a meta where like tanking is like healing. Right? Yep. We're playing these drain tanks and these gore drinker tanks and stuff, right? So when you have the Zoe, it's like, okay, well, they have 3 squishies, really, right? Graves gets armor. Jarvan has no magic resist. He's gore drinker Sterak's, and like, you can't gore drinker to do anything about a Zoe. And like, if your Sterak's gets popped just to a Zoe, it kind of sucks because now your Sterak's is gone. And he's, also runs like armor runes because you're jungling. Yeah. And stuff, right? Like, he doesn't have magic resist, and the Leona is level 7, and the top laners and stuff are level 12 because he's just roaming the entire game and never gaining levels, right? Like, he's 5 levels behind his top laner for a while. 5. So are you going to burst them? Yeah, probably.
Of course.
Right? And, Leona doesn't get Aftershock too, which is something he did really good. My favorite thing about what Vulcan did, because very few people would think to do this, but when he gets hit by the bubble, which was often, he dashes in to proc his Aftershock so that he takes less damage from the bubble. And the other thing that does is Zoe does damage based on the distance traveled. So if you get hit by a bubble, most people try to run away. Well, that gives Zoe more distance so that if it hits you, it's just going to do even more. But if you get hit by the bubble and then immediately jump the Zoe, which people don't do very often, well, now because you're right in her face, even if she hits you with that sleepy paddle star, it's going to do way less damage because you're in her face and her damage scales with the distance traveled.
Yep.
Right? So jumping on her face, triggering your Aftershock and like getting the damage done is the exact right thing to do. And it's really cool to see that because I can't remember another game where I've seen like, how do we deal with when I get hit by the bubble, I jump in.
But see, like it's individual moments like that like I can look at the disparate parts and go like, yes, each of these players are good. Like to what degree are they good is like debatable, but they've all have like a world's caliber play to them at any given point. They just don't have it together.
Yeah. My point there, I guess because I didn't finish it, was just that you have a team comp where no matter who the Zoe bubble hits, it's an issue, right?
Yep.
You don't have anything that can just soak up poke, right? And a lot of these team comps don't. So that's why we're getting into these situations where like the Jace and stuff are so good, is because, well, if your only tank line is like the Styrax and stuff, which is like only going to be good in like that one team fight, you don't have something that can just. We're not building anything that has I would probably bet probably 0. I don't remember any, but like at least like less than like how many Warmogs have you seen built this entire world championship?
0.
0.
0.
Right? That's the best thing to deal with, like a Zoe.
But it's not a viable thing to build because of how much of like it delays your core path and it doesn't synergize with anything until you've had some part of your core path. Yeah.
If you're doing like there's the Sejuani build where it's like you do its second item and you specifically build everything is just into hit points so that you can hit 3,000 hit points with your mythic, Warmogs, and 1 ruby crystal is what you need to hit 3,000 hit points. If you've seen that. And it's great because you hit it so early. But Cho'Gath and Sejuani, like these HP tanks are not meta.
No.
So it enables, right? We don't have anything that absorbs poke.
I think despite the fact that none of them have like an immediate thing to answer the Zoe, I don't understand why it isn't an immediate signal that the second Vulcan goes in, they should also all be going in. Right? The thing that like makes it super easy is that like the second you just do anything to turn, it repositions the entire team fight in a way that like just completely messes up the immediate poke and re-engage that would happen. If you get hit by the bubble, you know they're all prepping for the damage to put in to re-engage. So instead of giving them the opportunity for that, and you know you're going to take the damage anyways, turn in and start controlling the pace of it. I'm just so surprised by how much people are letting these Zoe comps get away with the situation instead of just like immediately just engaging right off the bat. Like the strongest types of like counters to Zoe are the ones that just follow her. Just
and that's why their bans like set up Zoe so well, because it's saying, okay, they already picked their support early, which is not a thing that was done very often.
Yeah.
But because they locked in the Leona early, it's like, okay, they can't pick the Braum or anything. Or something like a Nautilus that can just ult something. Like, okay, they have the Leona, cool. And we immediately, our bans are Olaf, which is not that common of a ban. Like, really, is Olaf worth banning like that high up? Well, they banned the Olaf and the Xin, those two specifically, because those are the two that are good into the Zoe.
Yeah.
Right, and then that can deal with that with their ultimates, right? So normally, like, okay, is Olaf the next jungler that's like S tier, right? Not necessarily. He's good, but
But he definitely does answer anything that Zoe would deal with.
Yeah, exactly.
I think there's another thing to be mentioned, and I didn't mention any of the bans for the round one for Gen G because it was every game LeBlanc Twisted Fate. Again, I think all the Korean teams, and I think all the top teams actually have pegged those two as not worth letting go. Just don't let it happen. Don't ever let it happen. To the point where, like, if you're on red side, you're likely going to ban LeBlanc, Twisted Fate, and Yumi. Just to give you a perspective, the times where you get all three LeBlanc, Twisted Fate, and Yumi in all, so it's 9. Out of all these 14 games, we got 2.
Yeah, a lot.
A lot. Yeah. They're a lot in round one, right? And any given point where you have one of the two sides having 2 of them is nearly 90% of these games. Every round one has 2 or all 3 of them banned in round one. Literally, game 1, go down the line. All 3 Yumi, LeBlanc, and Twisted Fate banned. Game 2, 2 of them are banned. Game 3, 2 of them are banned. That's 3 games in a row where there's 2 or 3 of them banned. EDG game 1, all 3 of them banned. Go down the list, 2 of them are banned. Go down the list, all 3 of them are banned.
Really, the only difference in this series is game 1, Cloud9 decides to ban Renekton.
Well, it's because LeBlanc is banned from Gen G side. LeBlanc and Twisted Fate are banned on the Gen Z side.
Well, yeah, but what purpose does the Renekton ban serve?
Oh, right. I wrote down what that expressed to me. So if I was to go to game 1 of this, I wrote here. All right, it's team fighting and skirmish options. So what I think they understood is that the Renekton was primarily for a side lane option that they wanted to have.
Yeah, but like,
and they never drafted for that side lane option.
Renekton was like majorly nerfed before Worlds, right?
Yep. I don't know why it's still relevant in any pick or ban at this point.
They undid some of the nerf for like whatever 7.19 or something, but the patch the Worlds is on is like Renekton's whatever it was. His stun went from like 1.25 to 0.75, or something. Mm-hmm.
The only reason why I see Renekton ban ever is if it's a mid lane option that you want to avoid seeing them use, or if you're going to be playing side lanes yourself, right? Like it's a duo option or a shuts down the side lane option because it does well in mid to late games in terms of lane matchups. It's a thing that is the only reason why I see it ever used. And then they pick Yasuo, which for the purposes of this composition was never going to do side lanes. So I actually straight up do not understand this ban from this Renekton ban. The thing it suggested never came up. It straight up just never came up.
Yep.
They were like, you're cool. Fuck. Ah. Yeah. Well, so let's do as this video's gone on for quite some time now. Now that we've actually gone through all of these, there's only 3 series left. The 2 series that we have going forward is the Damwon versus T1 and the EDG versus GENG. Now, in my head, the EDG versus GENG is a done deal. Any arguments for it is if EDG somehow get really sick or decide to throw the game.
Like EDG wins.
EDG wins, yes.
Okay, I was making sure because I'm like,
I
definitely put EDG.
No, I would. That's what I'm saying. Like, unless
okay.
EDG is sick or is throwing the game, EDG wins. I don't think there's an argument for that in any world. Like, the confidence that people had for C9 beating GENG, a little much. The confidence for GENG winning against EDG is about equal to me. As much as like GENG was a lot more coordinated, their pacing is too slow. EDG will eat up that lack of pacing like it's breakfast. Like it'll be an easy time for them to control it at any given point.
What I worry about though is just that we get the same thing that happened where it's EDG doesn't have the front line and BDD's on a Zoe or something where he can just be like picking people off and there's not really much they can do about it.
I would say if that's the case, Zoe never gets picked round 1. Right? So if you're concerned about that and you know your draft is going that direction, just ban it in round 2. I'm pretty sure that's actually
I'm
happened.
saying I don't think they are necessarily going to worry about it too much, but yeah, I don't see that winning Gen G like 3 games. Like I can see it being 3-1, maybe 3-2 if Gen
I
G
would see
manages
3-1
like
also. Yeah.
right, like they'll definitely pull it off like once kind of thing, but
Right.
it's if they find other things they can do.
Mm-hmm.
They can do that with, right? Like, if they can find other things that can like force, they could take advantage of the fact that EDG doesn't like has the enchanters that enchanters do better the longer the fight is, right? If they can make
True.
these quick, decisive fights that take advantage of the fact that enchanters are strongest when they get multiple rounds of spells off.
That's
So,
true. But I do
right.
think that EDG is a much more flexible team, and they tend to adapt much better. And so if they recognize that any of their main strategies do not work, or they recognize immediately off the cuff that like this strategy is not going to work against Gen G, then they're not going to do it. They're an incredibly well prepared team.
Yep.
Seeing them, they got taken off guard for one best of 5 during their playoffs, and then never dropped it ever again. They were straight up, bar for bar, the best of 5 team going in, right? Fun Plus Phoenix had the better record overall, but EDG was the most flexible team. And to me, I think that's the difference maker here, is that Gen G is not a flexible team, especially when they lose. And they didn't lose, right? But they're definitely not going to adapt, or not, I shouldn't say definitely, but they're likely not going to adapt very well. But I agree with you. It would surprise me to see it go 3-0. I would definitely also aim for 3-1. The thing that's a much more contested argument for the semifinals is the Damwon versus T1. And for Pick'ems, I actually have to pick Damwon no matter what. But historically speaking, you would say it's likely Damwon 3-1 or 3-0. It would be as bold to say even that whoever wins the first game is likely going to 3-0 the whole thing.
You really think Damwon's going to lose 3-0?
If Damwon loses, yeah, it's the only way I can see them losing is 3-0. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's an interesting argument.
Because they're a momentum-based team.
Okay.
And it's more like because T1's a momentum-based team. I should have specified that. T1 is momentum-based. And so if T1 is managing to win at any given point, it's because they've brought the momentum and they kept it going. And they're usually a fairly solid team at adapting when they're winning. Usually the onus of adapting from game to game is from the losing team. But T1 as a winning team adapts very well from game to game. They go like, all right, cool, we won this game doing this style. If they're going to adapt, they have to do it this way, so we're going to prevent that from doing it. But I don't expect necessarily, like if I see T1 winning, I see T1 winning 3-0. If I see Damwon winning, I could see the 3-1, but likely a 3-0.
I see it as a lot more closer.
Okay.
Just because like it's not like we've just seen like one particular style or anything out of either of these teams.
True.
Like we've seen them be able to adapt to different things and pull out different styles of team comps.
Yes.
So I think that if one team does get like there's like a stomp or something, they're gonna come back with something entirely different. That is still, they don't just have like, one card in their deck
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yes.
So I can see teams being able and like having answers and being able to recover.
That's fair. That's 100% fair. Yeah.
Or like I can see whatever, like T1 swaps a player and like
Yeah, because I think this year you're allowed to have two substitutes instead of just the one substitute,
Yep.
which is crazy. Riot should just let all 10 substitutes come in. We'd have much better worlds. They also have to change a whole bunch of other things, but that's a side story. No, I can understand that argument. My brain mostly thinks about the way these two teams have interacted with each other in the past. And,
Yeah.
like, it's rare for a 3-1 to happen with Korean best of fives. It's usually 3-0s. And if it's a 3-1, it's because, like, one of the teams has messed up. That, at least in the near history.
Yeah, I mean, like I always think back to like the classic example of like this last year's Worlds, because it's not classic at this point, but like, where the tank Rengar was just so weird that they just weren't prepared for it, and they're like, oh,
Right.
we did not have an answer to the tank Rengar. We were the better team, and we are gonna win the series, but we didn't specifically have an answer to tank Rengar. Then the next game we just ban it, and it's fine.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So like, they had something. The other team was like, oh, this kind of. They pulled off a win and just. That was a little bit more towards like cheese, as you'd call it.
Yeah.
But not necessarily that, just as much as like the whatever. We're playing the full poke comp and they weren't necessarily expecting that or something, right? Like,
yes.
whatever. Yep.
Well, with that, that's our predictions. Oh, you never actually said, did you think Damwon or T1?
Oh, Damwon.
Damwon. All right, so we're both on Damwon. We're both on ADG. We'll see. So far, we're 100% for the knockout stage, but it's the 100% for the knockout stage, which is only 4 series.
Yeah.
So we'll see if we keep up that streak. For all of you who are watching, let us know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you for watching all throughout this entire really long video. We really appreciate it. Let us know what you think, like who's going to win the next 2 series. If you think that maybe I'm completely wild to think that it's going to go 3-0 all the way through, or maybe you're with me on this one. I don't know if you're a T1 supporter like Josh is. Otherwise, leave a like and subscribe if you did enjoy the video, and we're going to see you next week, or fingers crossed, hopefully Josh is here. We know for sure he'll be here for the last video, which is after the finals, for a retrospective of the tournament. But we'll see for scheduling and all that. But yeah, we'll see you next week. Bye.